Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this introductory webinar of Big Data for Better Hearts. This is one of the programs under the stable of activities in the Innovative Medicines Initiative's Big Data for Better Outcomes. My name is Dwayne Schultes, and I'll be moderating the webinar this afternoon from the offices of the European Heart Agency here in Brussels. We have an exceptional group of speakers, as you can see, and they're all leading the project. And before we get started and let them tell you about what Big Data for Better Hearts is about, I'd like to walk you through some of the webinar tools that you can use with us today to interact and hear what's going on. So firstly, we have provided 20 international phone numbers for you to dial in on your phone. If you are having computer audio issues, you have the opportunity to switch in and dial in on the phone. You'll be able to hear everything just fine. And just please make the switch if you're having audio problems, and that should work for you very well. At the end of the webinar, we anticipate having 30 minutes for question and answer. There is a question bar that we will be taking questions, so please feel free to send in the questions as you are able. We will address them as they come in and in the order of priority. So with that, I'd like to turn now to Rick Groba, who will introduce Big Data for Better Hearts. Rick, the floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dwayne. It's a great pleasure to kick off in this important webinar. Welcome to the audience wherever you are. We're very pleased that so many of you have joined us this afternoon to speak about Big Data at Heart. And in just a couple of slides, I'll try to give you some background and the general structure of the project. Now, the rationale of Big Data at Heart can be found in frustration among many about progress in drug development. There's questions about definitions of disease which may or may not ignore underlying mechanisms. That there's lack of approved relevant patient-centered outcomes. Data access appears to be limited to selected small patient populations where there's much more to draw from. And this has resulted in mismatch between trial and real-world patients. We know from many that there is questions about the extent to which what has been found in major clinical trials would apply to individual patients in your office. And that reflects a large inter-individual variation in prognosis and a very heterogeneous treatment response. And like many, we feel that the next revolution in science, that is big data, may help to get closer to answering some of these issues. Data that come in ever greater variety, data that come at very high speed and at increased volumes, data that provide new opportunities to learn more about variation and individualize our approaches to patients. So that has led to Big Data at Heart. It's a consortium aimed to collectively work on improving patients' outcomes. It was launched in March 2017. It involves 19 stakeholders under the Innovative Medicines Initiative 2 scheme of funding. And in summary, the aim of the project is to apply big data approaches to improve patient outcomes in the most common cardiovascular diseases in Europe today, that is acute coronary syndromes, atrial fibrillation, and heart failure. And we believe that we're very fortunate to have been able to bring together an unprecedented consortium, which includes the European Society of Cardiology, numerous European academic research groups, and the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, EFPIA. Together, we've joined forces to develop a big data-driven translational research platform. And the academic partners include University College London, the University of Cambridge, Valencia, ICHOM, Karolinska, Hamburg University, University of Birmingham, University of Uppsala, Charité in Berlin, and the University Medical Center Utrecht. And FPA is represented by Bayer, Vifor, Servier, SomaLogic, Novartis, and Actelion. So truly a broad-based assembly of parties that together will work on and invite others to join forces to learn from big data analytics. The intention is to derive clinically relevant disease phenotypes and scalable insights from real-world evidence and personalized medicine to advanced analytics. And we'll show you a bit more detail on the approach that we take in a minute. So it's really large in terms of access to data too. Collectively, the partners that currently form the consortium have brought together data on 25 million subjects across Europe. And if you look at this graph, you see a selection of the data sources that can be utilized in big data at heart, and some are very large and they are relatively limited in terms of data points per individuals. And some have many more data points, including biomarker, genetic, and other phenotypic data, but have slightly more limited size. And we believe that walking through the various directions in this graph and combining data sources with overlapping information will be able to address the questions that Big Data at Heart is aimed to address. Now, what those questions are, it's just impossible to summarize in a few minutes the potential that there are in terms of addressing relevant translational and applied clinical research questions. But we're fortunate that right now, on the verge of appearing on the internet is the paper that you see here. It may or may not be available at this particular point. I checked 10 minutes ago, it wasn't there yet, but it will be available soon. And it is a report from the consortium, and some of the consortium members are listed here among the authorship. And it gives a fairly comprehensive overview of the challenges, but particularly the potential of early and late translational cardiovascular research using big data. And this is highly recommended because it really gives much more detail on what the consortium in the Big Data at Heart project aims to address. Now, the structure of the project is shown in this slide. We follow the IMI preferred format of work packages, and all in all, we have 7. Work package 1 is the project management that's currently based at the University Medical Center Utrecht. Work package 2 involves various parties working on outcome definitions and also revisiting existing definitions to accommodate the potential that is created by using multiple data sources in looking into variation. Work package 3 is very important for use of all these different data sources because it addresses data harmonization. Work package 4 is looking at modes to enrich certain data sources and try to get as many rich databases as can be achieved, and that involves, for example, enrichment by additional phenotypic data, but also proteomics, metabolomics, additional genomic data. During the running phase of the Big Data at Heart project, we expect that we'll be able to supplement some of these databases with additional measurements and also bring in new databases with richer data. Now, all of this, of course, needs to be analyzed, and here too, we're navigating new waters. We'll be exploring innovative data analytical techniques ranging from advanced available statistical analyses to machine learning, AE approaches to eventually be able to cope with the knowledge that is embedded in this enormous set of data. It should not be forgotten that getting to the heart of such large data sets immediately brings questions about data accessibility, data privacy, ethics, and legal issues. And this is very important not only for Big Data at Heart, but for many similar projects. As we think that we're entering new territory, we feel that we should also have state-of-the-art discussions and perhaps even develop new concepts when it gets to protecting privacy of individuals, while at the same time allowing to learn from data that those individuals provided to the data sources. So the ethics, legal, and data privacy work package, we believe, is very important. All along this work, and the webinar today is, I believe, a good example of that, we want to stay connected to our peers, and we want to stay connected to the professional community by reporting on what we're doing. And for that, and for dissemination of the results, we have a separate work package, which is effectively based at the ESC offices in Brussels, and I'm sure you'll learn much more about that through that source. So communication and dissemination of results is a separate work package. Now, overlaying the work package structure, we have a set of case studies that addresses specific short-term goals, and the next presenter will give you more detail on that. So to sum up this brief introduction to big data at heart, it's all about an ambition that we've collectively formulated, that we are very committed to work on, and for which we invite anyone with an interest in this to join and get actively engaged. In this ambition, we want to find new definitions of disease and outcomes in ways that are universal and computable, while at the same time being relevant for patients, clinicians, industry, and regulators. We're building an informatics platform that allows to link, visualize, and harmonize data from various sources of varying types, of varying degrees of completeness and structure. For this, we need data science techniques to develop these new definitions of disease, identify new phenotypes, and work our way towards more personalized predictive models and eventually to more personalized medicine. We hope that what the project is going to deliver will set new standards to guidelines that allow cross-border usage of big data sources. And as I said, when speaking about work package 7, we expect that alongside this work, we will also learn more and find our ways in the difficult area of ethical and legal constraints, as well as data security. So this is what I had to say about big data at heart. You can contact any one of us. You'll have my contact details here if you have specific questions, and we'll look forward to some questions and answers at the end of this webinar. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. Very well done, thank you. To discuss now the scientific basis of the project, we're going to move to the Big Data at Heart Scientific Coordinator, Volkert Aspergs, who's also at UMC Utrecht. Volkert, thank you for joining us. I am now passing the webinar floor to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. I hope everybody can see my screen now. So as Rick is mentioning, so there are quite a lot of work packages in this consortium, and just to make sure that we're not working in parallel in silos, we decided to create cost-cutting case studies to facilitate crosstalks between the work packages. Of course, they are all interrelated. For data analysis, you need, of course, also some legal and ethical boundaries as well. The same applies for the outcome definitions. It cannot stand alone. You need some input from the data enrichment and data analysis work packages. So that's why we defined 6 cross-cutting case studies. It's not limited to this case study. It's just to give the consortium a feeling and to give us a head start to work on some concrete deliverables on the short term. And I will discuss them in short in the next slides. So there are 6 case studies. Number 1 is the comparison of real-world heart failure patients to trial patients to guide future trials. As was mentioned by Rick, there's a mismatch. The representability of clinical trials is often not good enough. If you look at the meta-analysis and reviews published on this topic, it's around 70% of the clinical trials published in cardiology doesn't match the real-world heart failure or the real-world cardiology patients. Often, real-world patients are older, are more often female, and have more comorbidities than included in clinical trials. So in this case study, we try to get more insights in the real-world patients to guide the inclusion and exclusion criteria of future trials, and specifically for heart failure. So in the second case study, we're focusing more on redefining heart failure subphenotypes and outcomes using omics and electronic health record data resources. As all clinicians are aware on the call, is the definition of heart failure is quite difficult. It's heterogeneous. It's more a description of different symptoms, but doesn't say anything about underlying etiology. So what we're trying to do is, in the large sets of electronic health record data available within our consortium, like Caliber or Sweetheart or Abecasis in Spain, is do some unstructured, unsupervised cluster analysis to look whether we can redefine the different heart failure diseases based on clinical phenotypes. Moreover, Hermes Consortium and the Genius CSD Consortium are part of the IMI Consortium. Hermes is focusing on the genetic background of heart failure, which gives us more insight in omics and how we can define heart failure based on the genetic architecture. The Genius Consortium includes patients with coronary heart disease and looking at new onset heart failure in those patients at high risk and the underlying genetic background. So case study number 3 is to compare clinical outcomes derived from public registries with formally educated endpoints. This is done in the Validate Sweetheart trial from Sweden, where we're going to compare formally educated endpoints with national data from national registries. This is particularly important, I think, for phase 4 studies in the near future to see how drugs are used, but also in clinical practice, but also in other patients than included in the original clinical trials. Case study 4. So we compare heart failure epidemiology across different countries. We need to therefore harmonize our national registries and electronic health records. So that's something what we're aiming to do in this consortium. We're starting off with Sweden, Holland, the UK, and Spain, and trying to map them to a common data language so that we can compare the epidemiology of heart failure across these 4 countries. And that's probably, hopefully, gives us insight in for designing future trials as well. Case study number 5 is to identify novel druggable targets using proteomics and genomics in iron depletion. As people may be aware, nowadays genetics is often used as a proxy to stimulate randomized clinical trials to prioritize potential druggable targets. And that's something what we're going to do specifically for iron depletion in the interval study, which is led by the University of Cambridge. It's a highly enriched cohort of blood donors with 50,000 people with genotypes available, but also large-scale proteomics and iron biomarkers. So this is something we're going to do in case study number 5. And the final case study number 6 is investigate how data from wearables apps can be used as pre-market and post-market evidence. And what we're going to do is enrich a heart failure trial and an atrial fibrillation trial with wearables, so giving patients tracking devices to see what the intervention does on activity, but also on burden of arrhythmia and atrial fibrillation itself. And this is something that we do in collaboration with another IMI consortium, Radar CNS, that is building an open source platform to extract data from different wearable sources to analyze for scientific purposes. So this is a nice example of how we collaborate across the different IMIs as well. So more info regarding, so I'm happy to take any questions later on during the Q&A regarding specific case studies. If you want to join a case study or have additional questions, just don't hesitate to contact me. We're not limited to these 6 case studies, but just gives you a flavor of what capabilities are and opportunities are within this IMI consortium. Happy to hand over back to Dwayne.
Thank you very much, Volker. Just so everyone is aware, we will be taking Q&A at the end of the session here after the next set of presentations. So we anticipate about 30 minutes for open questions. You can use the question bar. We already have had a few questions come in. So please feel free to ask the questions you have. We look forward to answering them with everyone here that we have online. So I am now going to turn to our final prepared presentation. I'll begin here with Panos Vardis, who is the ECS president as well as the chief strategy officer of the European Heart Agency. Panos, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone being in this webinar. And I would like to start my first slide, starting from this one. And indeed, what I am planning to do during the next 5 minutes is to present the general concept behind the very important European project with the title Innovative Medicines Initiative, IMI. The Innovative Medicines Initiative, IMI, we believe, and many believe, that this is Europe's largest public-private initiative aiming to speed up the development of better and safer medicines for patients. It does this by establishing critical mass consortia between the key players involved in healthcare research, including, of course, universities, the pharmaceutical and other industries, small or medium-sized enterprises, patient organizations, and medicines regulators to make drug research and development processes in Europe more innovative and more efficient. IMI is aiming to develop a true partnership where industry defines strategic research aid agendas and projects. All agendas address WHO healthcare priorities, and all areas such as discovery, development, healthcare delivery, and access models addressed. So this project aims to cover a wide spectrum of different very important topics and some important research to cover some research dilemmas. IMI was launched in 2008 and currently has over 50 projects, with more in the pipeline coming. The budget for the period 2008 to 2024 is estimated around 5 billion, with half of it coming from the European Union and other half coming from FPI. Okay, so the goal of the Innovative Medicines Initiative 2 is to develop next generation vaccines, medicines, and treatments, such as, for example, new antibiotics. It will build on the successes and lessons learned under IMI's first phase. So now we are running the second IMI. In particular, IMI 2 aims to improve the current drug development process by providing support for development of tools, standards, and approaches to assess efficacy, safety, and quality of regulated health products. This aim is going through, first, through identification of target and biomarket as main issues of these projects. And here we have to develop diagnostic and treatment biomarkers for diseases clearly linked to clinical relevance and approved by regulators, and thus create a better understanding of diseases on a molecular level. We are aiming also to develop innovative clinical trial paradigms and improve faster clinical development in a world of precision medicine, and we are aiming to develop new therapies for diseases for which there is a high unmet need. This is the main also aim and objective of each IMI2 project. We are here to give some examples. For example, Alzheimer's disease is one of the high targets of IMI2 projects. And of course, we are interested, and IMI2 is interested to develop new drugs, new medicines, new therapies for limited market incentives, such as antimicrobial resistance. We are talking about patient-tailored adherence programs that lead to understanding and improving their real-life situation. And IMI2 aims also to develop novel medicines in areas without sufficient incentives for industry through innovative medicines. So, you see, IMI2 and in general IMI's projects are aiming to develop medicines, diagnostic techniques, and everything related to certain populations of patients and certain areas of market. Next, please. Next. Okay, great. So, drawing on the annual priorities, a consortium of FPA companies, which is called industry consortium, and in some cases, other large companies or organizations active in health research agree on the need to work together and with other stakeholders on a specific issues, and they had agreed to define the scope of its project. So the first step is the definition of the scope. A topic text is drafted, and following consultation with various groups, the call text is sent to the IMI governing board for approval. So, you see, there is a certain pathway. There are certain steps in this process. First is the definition of the scope, and then the call text, which is sent to the IMI governing board for approval. Following this approval, IMI launches a call for proposals. This is the next step. All interested parties from academia, small and medium-sized enterprises, patients' organizations, regulatory agencies, etc., are invited to form consortia. This is very important, and submit a proposal in response to the call. And then the experts rank the applications, and the consortium that submitted the top rank application is invited to proceed to stage 2. The top rank applicant consortium and the FPA consortium behind the topic are invited to form a full consortium. This is called public and private partnership. This is the real aim of this project, the public and private partnership. And then they submit the full proposal. The full proposal is also reviewed by independent experts. If the full proposal receives a positive review, the full project consortium is invited to conclude a grant agreement governing the relationship between the project and IMI. Projects must also sign a consortium agreement, signed by all project partners, and finally, the project could start. So, more or less, these are the main steps necessary for a successful IMI project submission and approval. I think I have to stop here, and if there is any question, we could come later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now pass over to Gunnar Broberg, the Director of Epidemiology at Bayer, who will continue outlining the IMI project. Gunnar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dwayne. So I'm going to speak a little bit more general about the Big Data for Better Outcomes program. So as you have already heard, this program aims to improve the healthcare systems and to facilitate drug development and increase success rates in clinical trials. And in particular, the use of big data sources and hopefully making something smart to combine the sources to put them together. All these big data projects have a similar structure, and they are organized in themes. So the first theme is to design sets of standard outcomes and demonstrate value. Here we are talking about defining the diseases, and so in the cardiovascular project that we are now discussing, this is acute coronary syndrome, atrial fibrillation, and heart failure, and also to define the outcomes related to this. My computer suddenly died for some reason. I'm terribly sorry.
We're sorry to hear that, Gunnar. So you can no longer see your presentation?
No.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Why don't we take some questions here and see if you can get that recovered? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. All right. Yeah. Is everybody else available? Rick, Volker, can you join us again? Thank you. We're also now joined by Maureen Cronin, who's a consultant to Biopharma, who's also involved in the project. Hello, Maureen.
Hello.
So we've had a few questions from a few people, and let me just get up everyone's photos here while we're waiting. So one of the questions that's come in is, will we be circulating the presentations afterward? Yes, we will. We will also be circulating a video of what's been going on, so you'll be able to see everything that occurred. So yes, that will not be a problem. So all the presentations will be circulated after we get done with the presentation today. So that's the first thing. Secondly, everyone on the call, I mean, whoever wants to chime in, please feel free. We've been involved at my group in several IMI projects. 7 work packages is hugely ambitious. How does the project ensure that you will be able to maintain these very aggressive and needed objectives? How will you derive solutions in 7 work packages? How is that going to happen practically? And whoever wants to answer, please feel free.
Maureen, you haven't been able to say anything. Do you kick off or should I?
Well, why don't you start, Rick? You're the overall coordinator, and then I'll be happy to fill in if you want.
Yeah, because I think it's an important point that's raised by Dwayne. The project does not lack ambition, and one of the reasons why we felt that we should move in with a lot of ambition is because we feel that this is not the end, it's only the beginning. We feel that the potential for big data research across Europe in the field of cardiovascular medicine is huge, and it should be shown by the ambition and commitment of the ones involved in big data at heart. We realize that not all aims for each of the work packages is feasible, can be completely addressed within the 5-year scope of the initial project. But we do believe that should the project lead to a sustainable infrastructure and collaboration, that we can plug in additional projects and programs that would delve into more detail in these various areas. So it's only the beginning. I think that the work packages now reflect what we think is needed to make this fly. It's really the case studies that should demonstrate the power of these work packages, and the case studies have been formulated in much more specific terms, and we believe that for that reason the case studies will deliver and will be able to demonstrate the full potential of the project. But the ambition and the reach of big data at heart, in our view, goes beyond the project itself as it stands now.
Yeah, Rick, maybe I'd like to add, We're very fortunate to have actually Rick be leading this project. He has great experience already with IMI, and he brought the structure from a previous project to this project. So it's great to learn from the experience. And through the slide that Rick showed, you can see that we have an overall management team that is actually ensuring that each of the 7 work packages are not working in silo, also as Volker mentioned in his presentation, but indeed that we're informing each other and providing each other with the information we need to do to work in this matrix organization. So we have several measures in place to ensure we're reaching our goals. And then, as also mentioned by Rick, we're fortunate also to have the ESC as the leading communicator for the results of the project. And with that reach, as well as the European patient organization, the Heart Network, again, we have a great opportunity to make sure that the results should be utilized. So our hope is indeed that we'll get done, that we'll try to meet many of our objective goals, and that we'll be successful in communicating it.
That's great. Thank you very much. We've had a question here from Tessa Richards, and she's asking, how is this very large initiative systematically going to involve patients? So how is Big Data for Better Hearts involving patients? Who would like to address that?
Panos?
Yeah.
Panos, please. Thank you.
As you know, during the last decade, universities, but especially medical associations, are working closely with patients' organizations. So nowadays, and in this consortium, indeed, the European Heart Network is one of the partners. Nowadays we are including in this consortium patients' organizations, and we have the opportunity first to communicate with the patients, because to involve patients, the most important is to communicate with the patients. We like to know that everything we are doing, everything is made is in good collaboration and communication with some well-organized groups of patients. So in this case, for example, we are planning to communicate our actions, especially with heart problems patients, through the European Heart Network.
And how many patients roughly are in the European Heart Network, Gunnar and Panos?
In the European Heart Network, European Heart Network is a federal organization. It includes the heart foundations in many countries.
Okay.
In many countries. So there is not exactly a certain number of patients. We are counting. We know the number of the foundations represented in the European Heart Network.
And Gunnar, are you still with us?
Yes, now I'm back.
Thank you. So from a perspective of Bayer, how do you see, patients are increasingly involved in discovery and development. How do you see this working with patients from Bayer's perspective?
Well, this is very important, of course, for the industry, for all the pharma industries to have engagement, and we have specific engagement programs and engagement projects to make sure that we have the patients with us. And this program aims to define the outcomes and the associate the diseases as well as the outcomes in a way that all the stakeholders could agree to, and the patients is one very important stakeholder group.
And Maureen, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, and I totally want to just build on what Gunnar's saying, that we believe key to a big data approach to this type of project will be to make sure that the patients understand what we want to achieve. As Rick pointed out in his presentation, all of the data privacy and the legal issues and the ethical issues around data ownership are huge. And if people do not understand them, they can often lead to barriers to this type of approach of innovation. And that's why we believe it's crucial to have them on board, have them understand what we want to achieve, and hopefully agree with the overall goals of the project.
Thank you. Moving on, we have and thank you for your question, Tessa. Thank you very much. We have a question from Avishai Sisodia. And Vishai is asking, how can we participate in this program as a startup? So is this program scoped for startups, and is it sort of locked in now, or what's the opportunity for people joining in an SME, or is that ship sailed?
Yes, of course. Startups are encouraged to participate. As we discussed before, we are talking here about large companies, but also we're talking about small companies and startups. But the most important here is to encourage the startups to participate in different consortia. So, in other words, all these parties, universities, startups, larger companies, well-known companies, should be in communication. The private and public partnership aims to enhance the networking and the communication between different partners and different size companies.
I'd say specifically, if you're interested in joining the consortium, it is, I wouldn't call it a late stage, but we have already formed the consortium. But of course, we're open to partners who can join, who can augment the existing consortium. So if you have a specific question about joining, please do not hesitate to contact any of us. Rick gave his contact email at the beginning, so perhaps if you have a specific question, you could either address it to him or go onto the website where you can
Absolutely
contact us.
Yes, you're right, Maureen. Any interested part.
May I also add to this? Sorry.
Go ahead, Gunnar, please. Sorry.
Yeah, may I also add to this question? New companies are of course welcome to join. However, the match, the contribution from the European Commission will not be matched, but contributions from new companies are welcome.
Okay. Adams, do you want to?
No. I would like to encourage all the parties, all the possible participants to visit the existing site and to be aware about the calls, because there are many calls, and any one of the different parties should be aware of what the calls are each period.
But we need more resource. So if a company is interested in joining, and you can bring either funds or people there's plenty of work to be done, and we're very happy to join. Have you join if it's in addition to what's already.
So you are, just to be clear, you are looking for more industry members to participate fully in this IMI consortium.
If it fits, and as Gunnar said, unfortunately the funding won't be matched, but if they bring contribution in kind, it would be highly welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Rick and Volker, I have a question specifically targeting some of the scientific aspects here. And this is from a Felicitas Eichner. She'd like to ask if it's planned to expand the case study 4 into further European countries, such as France or Germany. It seems to be a great idea to try and standardize the collection of high-frequency epidemiology across more larger European countries. It's a fair point. Any comment, you two gentlemen?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. But I just want to come back to the prior comments first before I address this question regarding case study 4. So I just want to echo what Maureen is saying, that we're from the academic side as well, that we're welcoming startups, especially in the big data analytics, and we have been in contact not with dozens, but I think up to 10 companies already. That's going to say we cannot provide like financial resources, but we do provide, of course, a great platform for this kind of companies to test their creations and their support tools within this consortium, of course, due to the fact that we have the European Society of Cardiology and some esteemed institutes within our consortium people can have access to through big data at the heart. And I think we're quite open for co-creation within this consortium. So not only industry itself, but also startup companies are more than welcome to join. So regarding a case study for the question, of course, we welcome other European countries. We just started off. It's more pragmatic with the countries that were included in this consortium. But please do contact me. Of course, I think the impact will only be higher if we add more countries. But from a practical side, in my experience, it's quite hard. It's quite hard to really map the different registries to each other, because there are differences between the countries, which has implications for the results and how you're going to interpret them at a later stage.
Thank you. So if the mapping is available, if there was the mapping available, you would be willing to expand? Would that make it easier?
Yeah, so we're mapping now to OMOP all the registries. So if there is already some mapping done, or there are resources available to map or to join, please do contact us.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And following up on that, there's a question here from Eric Geeson. Thank you for your question, Eric. When do you expect to start having some results, either preliminary or full, from the case studies?
So we're already ongoing with the case studies. Some are more advanced than others, but I suspect that early 2018 we will have the first results ready.
Great. We have a question here from an Aaron Jenkins, who is asking if they would like to submit new questions for analysis or topics. How would they go about doing so in the context of the project? What would be the best way to do that? Anyone? Would it be through the website? Or?
Yeah, I would be pleased to address that. I think that we are always on the lookout for great ideas. Probably the best way to get this on the agenda is to send it to the management committee of Big Data at Heart, so we can discuss whether it already fits in one of the work packages or whether it would mean an extension or expansion of that. Should it be related to some of the case studies we're already doing, we can bring that to the investigators working on the data and see whether they can accommodate that. So we welcome ideas, and we will always try to accommodate that. But of course, we have to keep in mind that there's a certain set of deliverables that we have committed to, and we should prioritize those. But I'm sure there's plenty of room.
Thank you. We have another question here from Viola Bunia Corbetta. Thank you, Viola, for your question. Could you say a few words about how you are working on ensuring the quality of the data collected? So that's always a topic in these questions. Data quality, avoiding GIGO. Who wants to address that? Rick? I'm going to throw to you, Rick. What about data quality?
Yes, sure, and I take it the others will join in.
They will have your back, Rick. Yes, they will have your back.
Yeah. For starters, I think that we're fortunate that the sources of data that we use are typically existing cohorts on which there's already a lot of work done. So quality assurance measures have been taken in most of these cohorts. They have been checked for inconsistencies or for missing data or for other sources of error. Most of the cohorts have been existing for quite a while, and already results have been produced from those data sources. What we need to do is utilize the experience that the various holders of the cohorts have in the way they've organized their own quality assurance systems, and when new data come in, whether we can utilize those approaches to also safeguard the quality of new data sources. There's clearly an issue here in that, in spite of attempts to harmonize and map the data, that there will be discrepancies between various sources of data. Not always necessarily leading to risks of invalid results, but potentially increasing the level of noise, which then needs to be compensated for by the size of the data source that we have. So data quality is an issue, but for several of the data sources, we are already well on track with that. because of the history of those data sources, and we'll keep a keen eye on new data generation or enrichment to be sure that the quality is in line with what we have currently in stock.
So what we also building is So we are also building a metadata catalog, right, across the different cohorts and registries available, and try to list some of the data quality parameters as well, so that people are aware what's in the different data collections available, but also missing values and other indicators of quality.
Maureen,
may I add on this as well?
Sure,
thank you for the question. This is a very relevant question to build on what Rick and Volker said, that we are also planning to use data that is routinely collected from registers, not specifically aimed to be used in this type of studies, in this type of research. These are administrative registers built for administrating the healthcare and the cost related to healthcare use. So in that regard, we have one specific case study to evaluate the outcomes that are adjudicated in a clinical trial manner, and that will be validated through or the agreement between what is in the healthcare system versus what we see in the clinical trial setting. So this is one way of validating the data. We have also other ways that we can validate the data through in our studies, and I think especially when we are talking about outcomes, safety, effectiveness related outcomes, we always do some kind of validity checks of the diagnosis. So this is like a standard procedure, but sometimes data are not, cleaned a priori, and needs to go under specific validation exercises.
Maureen, yes, please.
Yeah, finally, building on all of the comments to my previous speakers, that is also one of the reasons why we're putting so much emphasis on disease definition. We know that this initiative is a starting point, and it won't be finalized within the realm of the project. But we believe upfront, using the big data available to us to agree on definitions of disease is important to ensure that we're all talking about the same thing. So that's why that has a huge emphasis in our project.
Nice, thank you. Hans, anything to add?
No.
No, it's fine. Thank you. We have a question here from a Scott Waggers. How are you going to deal with cross-data sharing given EU data protection? So cross-border issues. Scott asking a tough question there. A lot of people running for this exits now. Okay, who wants to address cross-border data sharing?
So thanks. This is Volker. Thanks for the question. I think this is a huge problem because all the ethics differ between the different countries, and then it's pretty hard in practice, of course, to share individual patient data. So what we're now trying to develop is, and we have quite some experience already in the genetic consortia that are part of the IMI, like the Genius and the Hermes, that includes more than 20 countries and 65 cohorts, is to a federated approach where you send out scripts, R scripts that run locally within the firewalls of the institutes, and you can share the output and summary files of this scripts, and that analyze on a more central location. Where there are also initiatives in the UK, but also in the European Union, regarding whether this federated approach can be more automatically, so that you can access data from outside without having access to the identifiable data. But that's something that we explore in this consortium as well, in work package 3. So this is a great question, and not only relevant for collaboration across the EU, but also across Atlantic.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, we didn't hear Gunnar's presentation, but We also have an associated IMI project called the Coordinating Support Initiative, and that is an overriding project that is helping all of the big data projects ongoing currently in the European Union, where we're learning from each other how to overcome some of the barriers. And specifically in Work Package 7, we will be talking about data privacy and many of the ethical and legal issues associated with this approach. If we look at what's going on in the U.S. with the Precision Medicines Initiative, we really want to make sure that European is not left behind just because of our complicated organization and structure.
That's fine. Thank you. We have one final question just to sort of tie everything together before we conclude this webinar. How will the results of Big Data at Heart turn into implementable solutions? Who within the consortia is responsible for turning these results into tangible deliverables? Thank you. And that's a question from Yusuf Safi Harp. Thank you very much, Yusuf. A very fine question. Rick, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yes, I'll take a crack at that, but I'll refer quickly to Panos, because I think that one of the great assets that the project can build upon is the intimate involvement of the European Society of Cardiology, one of the prime professional organizations across Europe, and in fact currently also working in many countries outside Europe. And there's a wealth of knowledge and as a big network to assure that whatever comes out of the activities of the consortium will find its way into guidelines, position papers, professional communication, other means of dissemination. But maybe, Panos, you can spend a few words on that.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just allow me to summarize around the results of any kind of research, saying that we have three kinds of research: the clinical research and outcomes, the translational research, and the basic research. Here, at least in this project, we're talking about mostly about clinical and translational research outcomes. So, in brief, European Society of Cardiology is working different levels of communications, and also we are working in different levels, different scientific levels. We have the opportunity to communicate the results of this data through our educational tools, congresses, books, journals. Could you imagine how many papers could be created and communicated through our very esteemed journals, ESC journals? Okay, so we could communicate the results of this project through our research and educational tools. But not only that, we are communicating to the National Cardiac Society, so we have the opportunity to spread the results of through and to discuss the results through our peers around ESC land, 56 countries. But also we could communicate and disseminate and discuss the results in a political level, as we are working with ESC advocacy, and we are here in Brussels to work with a number of other protagonists related to cardiovascular medicine. And firstly, of course, we could discuss the results with our patients through the European Heart Network. So, to sum up, we have a lot of different tools and different pathways to communicate the results of this project.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Panos, and I think that's a good place to end this webinar. I'd like to thank all of you who joined us today. Rick and Volker from Utrecht University, thank you very much, gentlemen. Pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gunnar, sorry we couldn't get to your presentation, but pleasure to have you on. Your contribution was well noted. Thank you, Gunnar.
Thank you.
And Panos and Maureen here with me at the European Heart Agency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. And with that, we conclude this webinar. Thank you very much, everyone.